did a simple wristwatch carry so much weight in the midst of the Cold War? In 1972, Hamilton Watch Company released the very first digital timepiece, the Pulsar P1. The digital display was groundbreaking and represented massive progress in consumer technology in the West. It wasn't cheap, though. The P1 cost a whopping $2,100 upon release. That's over $15,000 in today's buying power, making digital watches an exclusive and expensive luxury. The Soviets, who had a long history of watchmaking, immediately got to work developing their own prototypes. Just 2 years later, U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger arrived in Moscow flexing his brand new Pulsar P2. Soviet General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev admired his watch but claimed the USSR had already developed the same technology. The very next day, Brezhnev presented Kissinger with a prototype of the Electronica 1. This quiet face-off was proof that Soviet ingenuity could keep up and compete with the West. The USSR continued to go band for band with Western watchmakers, eventually releasing the renowned Electronica 5 in 1977. This iconic silhouette was worn by cosmonaut Viktor Gorbatko in 1980, making it likely the first digital watch worn in space. Horology enthusiasts know that a watch is never just a watch. The Electronica line carried the weight of Soviet ideology wrapped around the wrists of students, laborers, and cosmonauts alike. A simple but powerful propaganda statement. Luxuries reserved for wealthy capitalists in the West were available to all citizens of the Soviet Union. And that's why the Electronica 5, born in a tech race of the Cold War, flown into orbit, and worn by millions, is the watch we chose to bring back. You can pick one up now at commandostore.com.
Did you know that for over a decade, Russian spies lived as your ordinary American neighbors? In 2010, FBI agents watched Anna Chapman sip coffee at a Manhattan cafe, discussing real estate deals like any other New York entrepreneur. She threw parties, dated wealthy men, and posted glamorous photos on social media. But Chapman was a deep-cover Russian operative, part of the illegals program. 10 spies had spent years building perfect American lives with fake marriages, suburban homes, and normal careers. They used invisible ink, buried cash in random parks, and sent encrypted radio messages to Moscow. Their mission was infiltrating government circles, targeting defense contractors and policymakers. On June 27, 2010, the FBI struck simultaneously across 4 states. Chapman was arrested while passing a fake passport to an undercover agent. The others were caught at soccer games, coffee shops, and their own front doors. Within days, the largest spy swap since the Cold War was arranged. America's most successful sleeper cell had operated completely undetected for decades. Did you know that for...
When I came to the United States, I was fundamentally, culturally, and psychologically unprepared. I spoke the language as well as anybody, but being an American, not at all. The one thing that saved me was that in the early years, I managed to stay away from inquisitive folks, particularly, say, ladies who quickly find out there's something different about you. When I came to the United States,
A&O time for respiration, 20 respirations a minute.
We gotta be able to move this guy.
Yep.
What if one little move could help you hold on to the little moments? Move my 3 p.m. meeting and message Jess not to rush home.
I can help with that.
From Army Special Forces to Navy SEALs, many within the military and special operations choose to wear their watches on the inside of the wrist. But why is this the case? Does wearing a watch this way provide genuine utility for warfighters? Or is this simply a trend among the military chic? In this video, we explore wearing watches inside of the wrist. Watches of Espionage is curated by a former CIA case officer with a passion for timepieces. On the WOE YouTube channel, we explore the intersection of watches and the military, intelligence, and national security. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be informed when we release new videos. Look at photos from any conflict over the past 50 years, and you are bound to see uniformed U.S. military personnel wearing a wristwatch on the inside of their wrist. While it's difficult to pinpoint when exactly this practice began, Vietnam-era Green Beret and MACV-SOG operator John Stryker Meyer, aka Tilt, told us it was a habit he picked up in Special Forces training in the 1960s. Fast forward to modern times, and watches have evolved from the mechanical Seiko and Tudor models favored by Spec Ops during the Vietnam War to digital tool watches and smartwatches utilized by those at the tip of the spear. During the global war on terror, in particular, military members from around the world began wearing their watches inside of their wrists, and today many operators continue to wear their watches in this way. But why? The practice of wearing a watch on the inside of the wrist has several functional benefits in a tactical environment, including protecting the crystal from damage, preventing glare or reflections, and ensuring the watch is legible while operating a weapon system or lying prone. That said, we would argue that today, inside wristing is just as much about culture as anything else. A watch is one of the few items uniformed personnel can customize to their taste, and for some, wearing a watch inside the wrist is a sure sign that you are a gunfighter, operator, or play Call of Duty on the weekends. But before tackling the LARPing crowd, let's explore some of the legitimate reasons why military personnel might choose to wear their watches on the inside of the wrist. Managing one's profile, how easily you are seen or detected, is a key part of any military or covert operation. Camouflage is the most obvious example, but something as small as a glare or reflection of a wristwatch in a sniper hide, or while moving to a target, could compromise a mission. There are few reflective things in nature, and a trained observer is always looking for something abnormal. Reflecting light from a mirror is often taught as a survival technique for people lost at sea. U.S. military-issue survival signal mirrors can reflect sunlight up to 100 miles, a potential lifesaver for mariners in distress, but not something you want in a tactical scenario. While a watch isn't a mirror, wearing it on the inside of the wrist reduces the risk of your watch's crystal catching the light and informing a potential adversary of your presence and position. In a tactical environment, a watch's nighttime legibility is essential. Most analog military watches incorporate phosphorescent luminescent material, or lume, on the dial and hands, and most digital tool watches have a push-button illumination function. Light discipline is a key aspect of signature management in low or no-light scenarios. Luminescent material on a watch can pose a potential vulnerability, especially with dive watches that are designed for underwater legibility and typically packed with brightly glowing lume. Tritium tubes, tiny glass vials filled with a mildly radioactive gas, enabling constant glow, are commonly used in military watches produced by brands including Marathon and Luminox. Compared to painted luminescent material, these tubes are particularly visible through night vision goggles and scopes. In either case, wearing a watch on the inside of the wrist diverts the light toward the individual instead of toward the enemy, potentially reducing your signature. Over time, warfighters have used several other methods to mitigate reflection and light emissions, including simply covering the watch in certain operational scenarios. During the Vietnam War, Navy SEALs fashioned snap-in rivets for their pull-through nylon straps, allowing them to attach a thin leather watch cover that could also be removed quickly to check the time. In the African bush wars of the 1960s and 70s, simple watch covers were also common and served the additional purpose of protecting a watch against harsh environments and thorns. Today, some tactical smartwatches have special low light and night vision specific functions to theoretically mitigate these risks. Although, as discussed in our video looking at the counterintelligence risks of Apple Watches, smartwatches present plenty of serious problems for special operators and intelligence professionals. common reasons people point to for wearing a watch inside of the wrist is that it is easier to check the time when weapons handling or during combat in close quarters battle. The idea is that with the watch on your support hand extended on the rifle, the time is visible without needing to release the weapon or turn over your wrist. While we can't help but wonder how often someone checks the time during a gunfight, this theory likely has validity for those spending extended periods lying prone in a sniper hide, where the slightest movement could give up your position. Additionally, former SOF members we spoke with explained that wearing the watch inside the wrist makes it easier to check the time with bulky gloves and prevents grinding the watch into the wrist during push-ups and obstacle course runs. Comfort is king. Despite the many legitimate reasons for practitioners to wear watches on the inside of the wrist, we would argue that for many, wearing a watch inside the wrist boils down to culture and personal expression. Whether we're talking about Merrell hiking shoes, 511 pants, Oakley shades, beards, or American flag baseball hats, these trends typically start with soft units, born out of utility. They are then picked up by the regular military and ultimately filtered down to pop culture, civilians, Reddit, and weekend warriors. For intelligence officers, a general rule of thumb is to avoid anything tactical or overtly related to the military. While inside wristing may be a practical application for law enforcement, spec ops, and uniformed military personnel, a black digital tool watch or a massive garment on the inside of your wrist is a clear tell. A signal to others that one is a quiet, professional gray man. For case officers, who mostly operate in capital cities while undercover, meaning posing as something they aren't, this watch-wearing methodology can make one stick out as much as a gold Rolex Daytona. That said, at the end of the day, you should enjoy this hobby in any way you see fit. If you want to LARP as a Navy SEAL, LARP on. We don't make the rules. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment, and hit the bell icon to be informed when we release new videos. For even more, check out our website, watchesofespionage.com, for more content.
On the 4th of August, 1945, a wooden replica of the Great Seal of the United States was given as a gift. On the 4th of August, 1945, a wooden replica of the Great Seal of the United States was given as a gift to the U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union, Mr. Averell Harriman, by the Russians as a sign of friendship. Mr. Harriman checked the gift and found it was just a wooden art piece, no wires or batteries inside it. But unknown to Harriman, that the device had a membrane, which vibrates when sound signals fall on it. A Soviet agent sitting in a van outside would flash a radio signal, and the voice vibrations are picked up. In this way, the Soviets were able to listen to all conversations inside the American embassy. It laid there for 7 years, until one day was discovered by accident by a British radio operator who heard the voice signals emanating from the embassy office. This bugging device is considered the most brilliant device ever invented for spying purposes. On the 4th
During the Cold War, the Soviets developed a watch for KGB agents, the Raketa Copernicus. But it wasn't just stylish. It told time using planetary orbits, symbolism, science, and secrecy all in one dial. Its hands move like planets, reflecting a blend of ideology and elegance. It's the most poetic spy watch ever made, and a symbol of a cosmic arms race. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and follow for more watch tips and
worries behind. With all best for beard, professional precision and 100% control in every detail. All better by design.
At Thames Water, we're replacing hundreds of miles of old pipes with brand new ones to reduce leakage. All part of our biggest network upgrade.
Watches play a significant role in films. An accurate depiction of a character often includes a watch they might actually wear. This is especially true in movies focusing on the military and intelligence. In this video, we'll discuss some of the most accurate and intriguing depictions of watches in movies relevant to our community. Watches of Espionage is curated by a former CIA case officer with a passion for timepieces. On the WOE YouTube channel, we explore the intersection of watches in the military, intelligence, and national security. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be informed when we release new videos. In Hollywood, decisions about watches vary from paid product placement to actors' personal watches, to prop masters who make deliberate choices based on specific character traits. Whether we're talking about mercenaries, arms dealers, CIA officers, or Navy SEALs, a thoughtfully selected timepiece can complement a fictional character, lending a sense of credibility and bridging the gap between reality and Hollywood, especially for those in the know. Watches in film are also influential. Believe it or not, we know plenty of real spies and operators whose watch choices were influenced by movies. Take, for example, the Omega Seamaster and its connection to James Bond. Even though Omega pays big bucks to be the watch of choice for 007, the Seamaster has still become a go-to option for real-life intelligence officers. A classic case of life imitating art and vice versa. Setting Bond aside, here are our top picks for Hollywood watches of espionage. In 13 Hours, Tyrone Woods, a CIA Global Response Staff contractor played by James Badge Dale, wore a 6-digit Rolex Submariner while defending a remote State Department facility in CIA Annex in Benghazi, Libya. As a former SEAL turned GRS contractor, this choice makes sense given the Naval Special Warfare community's long-standing relationship with Rolex and Tudor. As we have documented in the past on the WOE Dispatch, it is common for SEALs to commemorate a deployment or bud's graduation with a Rolex Submariner or Sea Dweller. This link dates back to the Vietnam War when SEALs wore Rolex and Tudor Submariners as tools in combat, cementing a connection that persists to this day. For a couple of modern examples, a Rolex Submariner was worn by SEAL Team 6 operator Will Chesney on the raid that killed Osama bin Laden, and another Rolex Deep Sea saw service on the wrist of former SEAL Rob Huberty in Afghanistan. For more on Will Chesney's Submariner and Rob Huberty's Deep Sea, check out their profile articles in the Dispatch, which are linked down below. Digging deeper into the real Tyrone Woods, the former SEAL had at least 2 luxury watches, a Rolex Sea Dweller Reference 16660 and a Panerai Luminor Marina, both of which he once tried to sell on a popular Rolex forum. On the morning of September 12, 2012, Woods died defending a remote CIA base when mortar fire struck his team's position on a rooftop. Tyrone was 41 years old. While the film is of course a dramatized Hollywood production, it shines a light on a rarely seen community of operators, who in this case made the ultimate sacrifice defending American lives. As is so often the case in our community, a watch is never just a watch, and the on-screen Rolex in 13 Hours tastefully pays homage to the watch worn by a fallen special operator. Once again, details matter. Watches play a central role in former SEAL turned writer Jack Carr's Terminal List book series. Central to the story of James Reese is a legacy Rolex Submariner purchased by his father Thomas Reese during R&R in Saigon during his first tour in Vietnam with SEAL Team 2. The elder Reese went on to wear the sub while serving as a CIA case officer overseas. Given the prominence of watches in the books, it's no surprise the Amazon series adaptation contains several accurate and well-placed watches for James Reese and his cast of supporting characters. We are told that these choices were organic and not product placements, which makes it even cooler. James Reese, played by Chris Pratt, wears several watches throughout the series, including an Oris Aquis Pro Date Caliber 400, a Resco Instruments Black Frog, a G-Shock, and a period-correct 511 military tactical field ops watch. Carr even makes a cameo wearing an Aries Diver, a watch from a micro-brand whose founder has CIA connections. Overall, the series is well done, and includes further watch spotting with several Oris models, a wide array of digital tool watches, and even an IWC Big Pilots worn by the villain Steve Horn, portrayed by Jai Courtney. Both Pratt and Carr are watch guys, and it's cool to see these pieces featured. Another subtle and accurate nod to our community. It's always great when someone gets it right. 2005's Lord of War is a mostly fictional Hollywood account of the life of Victor Bout, also known as the Merchant of Death, a notorious Russian arms dealer who took advantage of the fall of the Soviet Union to sell off the massive stockpile of leftover weapons at a significant profit. In the film, Yuri Orlov, played by Nicolas Cage, wears a white gold Rolex President Day Date, a fitting timepiece for the uber-wealthy and charismatic arms dealer. Cage, an avid watch collector himself, has an impressive collection, and this may be a personal watch he elected to wear for the film. The real Merchant of Death, Victor Bout, was arrested in a sting operation led by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration in Bangkok in 2008. During his arrest, Bout was wearing a Breitling B1, a watch he continued to wear while in detention for at least a month. Bout's B1 is yet another example of a sketchy dude wearing a Breitling. In our business, we call this a pattern. For more on the sketchy dudes wear Breitling phenomenon, be sure to check out the video on our channel.
It smells unbelievable.
I found this! It's the new 24/7 long-lasting Old Spice deodorant. No one can smell this good for so long. I'm on a seahorse.
In Argo, Ben Affleck portrays real-life CIA technical officer Tony Mendez, who was famously tasked with extracting 6 Americans holed up with the Canadian ambassador in Tehran after militants stormed the U.S. Embassy on November 4th, 1979. Disguised as a film producer scouting locations for a science fiction production in Tehran, Affleck's character wears a Rolex, which would theoretically be in keeping with his cover, assuming the Rolex in question was period correct. No joy, however, as the Rolex worn by Affleck in Argo was a decidedly modern deep-sea sea dweller, reference 116660, a watch released by the Crown in 2008. How this came to pass is anyone's guess. There is an urban legend that the film's prop department provided a replica of a period-correct Rolex Submariner for Affleck to wear, but the actor preferred a genuine Rolex. Any Rolex from the era, but perhaps especially the Submariner, would have made perfect sense for a posh Hollywood producer wearing a rugged luxury watch for his adventurous location scouting trip to Tehran. Instead, a modern 44mm Rolex designed for saturation diving time traveled to 1979 to assist Affleck on his personnel extraction adventure, once again proving that details matter in espionage as well as filmmaking. We have said several times in WOE dispatch articles that the Rolex GMT Master is the ultimate CIA case officer's watch. A classy and refined tool that signals to others you are a man of culture, yet don't mind getting your hands dirty. The ideal case officer has been described as a PhD that can win a bar fight, and this idiom covers Thomas Magnum of the 1980s Magnum PI television series well. Magnum was a former SEAL, naval intelligence officer, and a Vietnam War veteran. He's the ultimate cool guy from the 80s, and the Pepsi GMT is the perfect watch for him. During an interview with Frank Rousseau, Selleck said of the watch, "I've always loved that watch. It was the perfect match for Magnum. It's a watch that likes action, and believe me, I know what I'm talking about. I've had my fair share of sport watches, but never one as tough as the Rolex. It's been underwater, buried in sand, taken I don't know how many knocks, and never a problem. It's called the Pepsi because the bezel colors are the same as the Pepsi logo. Personally, I thought the red went well with the Ferrari, and the blue matched Hawaii's lagoons and sky. You might think you're cool, And you might actually be cool, but you will never be as cool as Tom Selleck sporting a legendary mustache in a red Ferrari wearing a vintage Rolex GMT Pepsi. Where many watches spotted in popular films are the product of pay-for-play product placement and a broader marketing agenda. Occasionally, Hollywood gets it right, equipping characters with timepieces that add to a film as a whole. This is particularly challenging in our community, where watches serve as so much more than just a method of telling time, acting as mementos of service, sacrifice, and operations gone by.
What does the Omega Speedmaster say about you?
What watches did USSR leaders wear? You'll be blown away, but Stalin had a Cartier in his collection that would now set you back around $200,000. Check these out. Pendule Mystérieuse Model A Cartier, made with gold, crystal, diamonds, platinum, sapphires, and agate. Lenin rocked Swiss-made Henry Moser and C timepieces, which were put together not in Switzerland, but right in Russia, in St. Petersburg. Mikhail Gorbachev sported a Vulcan crick featuring a 14-karat gold alloy membrane. It was the first wristwatch with a built-in alarm clock, and it was gifted to him by the president of Switzerland. He even made it onto the cover of the Times. What watches did you...
In-house for this price point, I was shocked. Привет и добро пожаловать в Spies Watchgang. Сегодня мы говорим о Raketa watches. Hello guys, welcome to the channel. Welcome today to a very special review. We're gonna discover Raketa watches and in particular 3 very cool models. For those of you who like the channel, you know that we like to discover new brands. And also, we like to go outside of Switzerland to check out what other countries are doing. We featured brands on the channel before from Japan, Germany, Austria, and also Russia. I'm a fan of Russian watchmaking, in particular Konstantin Chaikin, as I own a Joker watch myself. Today's independent watch brand is from St. Petersburg, Russia, and they've been around for a long, long time. The Raketa models we're going to discover today are the Russian Code, the Leopard 24, and also one of my favorites, the Avant-Garde model. The history of the company goes all the way back to 1721, when Peter the Great established the Imperial Peterhof factory. They started cutting precious stones and stones like marble for the royals, different private and public establishments, and they also crafted objects as well as luxury goods in general. In 1938, the factory began to manufacture ruby stones for watches. Yes, ruby stones. In 1945, the Kremlin ordered the company to create the Pobeda watch. Pobeda in Russian means victory. The name Raketa was actually only established after Yuri Gagarin, the first human to travel to space, wore a Pobeda watch. They renamed the brand Raketa, which means rocket in Russian. In the past as well as today, polar explorers still use Raketa watches on their explorations. After the fall of the Soviet Union, it was a problematic period for the company, and in 2014 they established the latest automatic movement. Today the brand is successfully led by David Henderson Stewart, who is a great man, very cool guy, and I think the future of the brand is in sure hands. This year in 2021, Raketa watches are actually celebrating 2 very special moments. First of all, 300 years of the establishment of Peter the Great, and 60 years of the Raketa brand. So be sure to follow the brand because they will drop a special edition very soon, and it's going to commemorate this whole anniversary. What's very unique about Raketa watches is that they actually create all the movements in-house, from start to finish. They even make their own hairsprings, which is seen only by a few Swiss manufacturers today. If you consider that the watches start at 750 euros, which is around $880 US, with their own hairspring manufactured in-house, this is incredible. For that price, you can get the Big Zero model, which is the start of their collection, and also it's an iconic timepiece known from the 80s. Raketa watches start with 0, not with 12 on top. It's very logical if you think about it, because if you count time, it starts at 0, not at 12. To produce each watch, there's a total of 8,021 operations that need to be made. And when you buy one of these watches, you actually get a photo of somebody working at the factory who was a part of your watch. For example, here we have two photos of two people working at the factory. This gentleman over here is named Yuri. It says that he produced the oscillating weight of the movement in your watch. He has worked at the Raketa watch factory since 1984. The lady on this picture, her name is Natalia, and she controlled the quality of all the wheels in the movement of your watch. She worked at Raketa watch factory since 1991. Also, what you get with each watch is this little flyer. It's actually an invitation. So everybody who wants to visit the Raketa watch factory can do so. You just have to go on their website or send them an email that you want to visit them at factory@raketa.com. Pretty simple. Or you just scan this QR code. Again, the packaging of these watches and also this personal note with two people working on your watches is very unusual for the Swiss watch industry. And I quite like this approach. It makes the purchase more personal. And also, you know, if you buy this watch, whose salary will you basically also fund, which is really cool to see. The first model we'll look into is the Russian code. It's a very special model actually, and let me tell you guys why. You see at first glance it doesn't seem like an unusual watch, right? You have a zero on top, which is, like I said, a design language of Raketa watches. And the numerals don't go the clockwise direction. They actually go counterclockwise. Raketa draws inspiration from space, exploration, important people from the past, and also Russian culture. This watch is from the Curiosity collection. That's why it has this counterclockwise time display. Actually, when you wear this watch for a few days, you get used to it, but at the beginning it might look a bit confusing. So why did they decide to do it counterclockwise? It's actually very logical. At the beginning, when sundials were invented, people were calculating the passage of time from left to right, so from sunrise to sunset. They thought to themselves, okay, the sun is rotating around the earth, so when the sun comes up, we start counting the day. When it goes down, we start counting the nighttime. But actually the earth rotates counterclockwise around the sun. So measuring the time with this sunrise-sunset indication at the beginning seems a bit wrong now. And on the dial you have the earth, and the seconds hand, the tip of it, is actually the moon. So the moon rotates around the earth counterclockwise as well. In the middle of the dial you have the globe with Russia, of course, in the middle and the North Pole on top. There's an arrow crossing the globe on which it says Сделано в России, which means made in Russia. And it shows you in which direction the earth actually rotates. Below it you have an inscription which says limited edition. And around the applied brown numerals you can actually find the constellations which you can see at nighttime in the sky. The hour, minute and seconds hand feature luminova, so you can see the watch also when it gets dark. And again, I just like the appeal of this model. As you can see, the watch features no bezel from the front, and the sapphire crystal is actually domed. Due to the domed sapphire crystal and also the in-house movement, the thickness of the watch is 16.55 millimeters. The diameter is 40.5 millimeters. Lug to lug we have 45 millimeters, and if you want to change the strap, the lug width is 22 millimeters. Turning the watch around, you can see we have a glance of the movement here. There's a little porthole from which you can see the balance wheel when you turn the rotor around, and the balance wheel is actually quite big. The balance wheel oscillates at 18,000 vibrations per hour or 2.5 Hertz. The movement features 24 rubies, like all of the other movements of Raketa watches, 40 hours of power reserve, and if you turn the watch around and you see the oscillating weight, it actually features a special decoration. It's called the Neva stripes. Neva is the fourth largest river in Europe, and it runs through St. Petersburg. What's cool about this movement also is that if you want to wind it, you don't turn it clockwise, but counterclockwise, of course. And if you want to change the time, you have to turn the crown clockwise. So let me give you a few examples here of how to read the time. If we stop the crown now, you'll actually see that it's 17 minutes past 5 o'clock. Next to the applied hour markers, you also have the inscription for the minutes. So this makes reading the time at the beginning also easier. If we now turn the crown to a different position, let's say right here, you'll see that it's 2 o'clock and 50 minutes. And the seconds hand rotates in this direction. Again, after a time, you get used to it. And it's also a neat party trick if you want to mess with your friends. You give them the watch, you ask them what the time is, and they look at you like you're some kind of a weirdo. This model comes in two different versions. This rose gold plated version which is a limited edition of 300 pieces, as well as the black PVD version, which is also a limited edition of 300 pieces. The price in euros is 1,380 or approximately 1,616 US dollars, including 20% VAT and worldwide shipping free with DHL. The next watch we're going to take a closer look at is the Leopard 24. The box is very special. It has a nice, very soft suede material here. There's an insignia of the Leopard submarine, which authenticates the original components of this watch, which we'll come to a bit later. You have a rubber strap with it and also a changing tool for the strap. This watch is a very practical dial. It's actually a 24-hour dial. You don't see this quite often. It starts here at 0, goes clockwise like normal watches, not like the Russian code, and it starts with 22, 23, 24. This is a very useful complication. At a quick glance, you know if it's daytime or if it's nighttime. So for people working on a submarine, this is a perfect dial. What's also very special about this watch, that the bezel, you can see it from the side here, is slightly bead blasted, and also it's a very special engraving on the inner side of the bezel. It's actually a metal part from a very specific Leopard K321 submarine. It's a Russian nuclear submarine. And because they're restoring it now, the shipyard actually gave Raketa watches some parts, and they made this beautiful bezel with it. The hour and minute hand replicate the hands which are used in the control panel of the submarine, and also feature luminova. Around the dial you see 6 lines, gray and red. This was actually used so the crew members would see when they shift, start and end. Turning the watch around, you can see the case is also a bit thicker, like on the Russian code one. Again, Russian watches are made to be simple, they were made to be robust, so they can withstand the test of time. The thickness of the case is 14.25 millimeters. The diameter on this model is 44 millimeters. Lug to lug, we have 50.4 millimeters. And the lug width, again, like on the other one, is 22 millimeters. Because this is a professional watch used in submarines, the water resistance is 200 meters. When we turn the watch around, you can see that the movement is very nicely decorated. We find gear-shaped patterns on the bridge of the movement as well as on the rotor, which is colored. The screws are also colored red. Again, if you think about the price point of Raketa watches and how much they make in-house, and that they even make special movements for each watch to fit its story, is remarkable. This movement also beats at 18,000 vibrations per hour or 2.5 Hz and has a power reserve of 40 hours, all made in St. Petersburg, Russia. This model is also a limited edition of 300 pieces. The price is 1,550 euros or approximately 1,815 US dollars, again including 20% VAT and also of course worldwide free shipping. The last but definitely not least watch I'm going to present to you guys today is one of my favorites on this table. It's the Avant-Garde watch. This is something I really like because it's very quirky, it's very special, and I've never seen a watch which looks anything similar to this. The Avant-Garde model and also the hands they use here date from the 1980s. It's something I particularly like, and I think it would be a nice daily watch, or if you want to, surprise a collector friend of yours. This watch was made to commemorate the Avant-Garde period and how Russian art made an impact around the world. The watch uses abstract design elements, as you can clearly see on the numerals and the hands, and it's meant to be a art in motion, so to speak. So basically, when the time changes, the, let's say, painting or the art piece also changes. The second hand is aligned with a pointer at the end, the hour hand is a triangle, and the minute hand is a big circle with a little tip at the end. Around the periphery of the dial, you have the markers for the 15, 30, 45, and 60 minute, which reminds me of a crosshair. The dial starts counting at 0 as all Raketa watches do, and you can see there's a special font used for the numerals and the indexes. I like the readability of the dial and also the contrast of all the colors. The diameter of the case is 40.5 millimeters. Lug to lug, you have 45 millimeters. The lug width is 22 millimeters, and when we turn the watch around, you also see that this one features a domed sapphire crystal as well. This makes the watch 16.55 millimeters thick. It's actually the same case as in the Russian code. Turning the watch around, you will again notice that the movement and the rotor are specially finished for this watch. There's a matte finish to the rotor with some nice design elements. Again, Raketa Сделано в России on the rotor itself, which is bidirectional, by the way. You can see the balance wheel beating here at 6 o'clock with 18,000 vibrations per hour, again 2.5 Hz, and it has a 40-hour power reserve. This model is a limited edition again of 300 pieces, but if you want a more discreet version, you can also get one which isn't coated. It's actually just in stainless steel. The price of this particular one is 1,350 euros, or approximately 1,580 US dollars, again including 20% VAT. If you think about the price point of Raketa watches, how much is made in-house, and what you guys get, it's really a great deal. Since I got these watches for the review, I've been wearing them quite a lot. It's cool if you buy multiple Raketa watches to fit each different occasion. So for example, if I go out with my friends to have a few drinks, I would wear the Avant-Garde collection. If I would have maybe a formal meeting or something, which would be more business-like, I would wear the Russian code because it looks like a rose gold watch. And if I would do some sporty activities, maybe go hiking or meet somebody who likes sports and military stuff, I would wear the Leopard 24. And again, because the price points are very accessible, if you think about independent watchmaking, buying 3 different watches doesn't break the bank that much. Of course, all the watches come with a warranty, and you can always service the watches in Europe. You don't necessarily have to ship them to St. Petersburg, Russia, so don't worry about that. And because the brand is gaining recognition and more people want to buy one, I'm sure the future is secured. Because each watch is so special and all of them have a special story, I really advise you to go check out the Raketa website, the social media accounts, which I'll all link in the description below. At this point, I also want to thank Raketa Watches for
Save up to 30% on small group travel during G Adventures.
Welcome. If you are interested in vintage timepieces, why not take a look at Soviet watches? Russian production goes back centuries to Tsar Peter the Great, who founded the first factory in St. Petersburg. Most of the vintage watches that you find today were made in the Soviet Union behind the Iron Curtain and are available for a few coins. These pieces offer a really interesting range of industrial design that you may not expect to find. Soviet vintage timepieces are one of the easiest ways to get into mechanical horology for the lowest price possible. One interesting feature is the strong connection of the Soviet state-controlled factories to contemporary politics. Some watches were dedicated to the Olympics in Moscow in 1980 or to a Congress of the Communist Party. Some of these pieces can claim firsts in watchmaking, like the first watch in space with Yuri Gagarin in the Vostok spacecraft. Let me give you some important tips before you get these vintage Soviet watches. Number 1. The best source is eBay or local sales site depending on your country. Shipping will depend on your location and availability. All of my sellers were in Eastern Europe, Russia, or in countries in Central Asia. Commercial Western watch sellers will probably dismiss these watches because of their low prices and small margins. Number 2. Common Soviet brands are, for example, Vostok, Rakita, Polyet, Pobeda, Zim, and Electronica. Number 3. There are probably a lot of so-called Frankenstein watches out there that combine several authentic and replica parts into a single functioning watch. Look out for cases and dials that show no decay, which is nearly impossible for vintage Soviet watches. All cases that I found are plated base metal with metal dials that wear down or corrode over time. It is less likely to get a Frankenstein or complete fake if you pay less than $40 and buy from a smaller private seller. Watches that look too pristine are probably using at least some replica parts like new dials. However, maybe you shouldn't care too much. After all, you are still getting a functional watch with some remade parts. Number 4. There are also complete pretenders out there, like a so-called Masonic Soviet watch, which makes no historical sense. You should avoid these unless you like the oddity. Number 5. Take a look at the movements and its engravings and if they match one of the online databases, because it is unlikely that someone would counterfeit an old mechanical Soviet movement. Number 6. Letters are either Cyrillic for the local Soviet market or in Latin if the watch was made for export into the West. Russians always use standard Roman or Arabic numerals. There are no distinctive Cyrillic numerals. Number 7. It will say made in USSR in Latin letters or the Cyrillic equivalent for watches made in the Soviet Union on the dial. Models after 1990 will have a made in Russia or Cyrillic Russia instead. Some watches have no markings at all on the dial. Number 8. Servicing a mechanical watch can be expensive between $50 to $200 depending on the service, so more than the value of most vintage watches. Some online sellers promise to have serviced the watches themselves and charge a bit more, which is well worth the money if you trust them. At least you should ask if the watch is running fine so you can use it right away. Number 9. Soviet quartz watches can be quite unique as well and alleviate most of the problem of old mechanical movements. The Electronica brand would be a good example to begin. Again, ask if the watch is running fine so you can use it right away. Number 10. You will most likely need new straps and maybe new spring bars that you can find online as well. Thanks for watching and check out my Flickr album for more watches.